Hi, everyone. I'm Nadina Galle, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Internet of Nature podcast. I'm so glad you're here. This week, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Ron Schneidermann, CEO of AllTrails, the most trusted and used outdoors platform in the world, with over 300,000 detailed, hand curated trail maps across 200 countries. Like many companies, AllTrails benefited from how the pandemic impacted consumer behavior. Amid lockdowns and social distancing measures, many people rekindled their interest in exploring the outdoors and reconnecting with nature. And many of them turned to AllTrails. They have an extensive collection of hiking, running, and mountain biking trails to find out where to go. COVID really was an accelerant of an important trend that we've been seeing for years, that people are getting outside more and more. That's everything we want on the Internet of Nature podcast. But before we kick off, a big thank you to this season's sponsor, the International Society of Arboriculture. The ISA is a global network that uses research, technology, and education to promote the professional practice of arboriculture and the benefits of trees. ISA exists so that professionals, allied professionals, public health officials, and consumers worldwide recognize the economic, environmental, and societal benefits and values of trees and their care. We want to thank them for their support. And as always, remember to subscribe and leave us a comment or review if you learned something new. Enjoy this episode with Ron. Great. Hi, Ron. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'm really excited to talk about an app that I feel like has gotten a ton of not only media attention in the past 2 years, but also just anecdotally for me has been an app that I've heard a lot about. Both my sister and my mom and a lot of my friends are big lovers, big fans of AllTrails. So it's really cool. I got some street cred when I said that I was having you on.
Oh, nice. That's great.
So, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself to get us started?
Sure. I'm Ron Schneidermann. I'm the CEO of AllTrails. I've been here for about 6 years now. And if your listeners don't know, AllTrails is a free app and website that helps you find really awesome trails anywhere you are on the globe so you can spend more time outside enjoying the outdoors.
And for those people that haven't yet heard of AllTrails or downloaded it, you guys have essentially global coverage. I think I read that you're now in 200 countries. You have trails covered in 200 countries. So the
Yeah,
better
and
question is like,
well,
where do
seven.
you not have trails?
That is a great question. We have them. We even have trails in Antarctica, so we can check the box for all seven continents as well.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it's that's really the I'd say the heartbeat of all trails is the way that we map out the globe, and that is one of our goals is to provide global coverage of our public lands and publicly accessible outdoor places, so that people all over the world in any country where they live can find peace and solace and calm outside, right? And tear down those barriers. So again, everyone can get access. So that's a big part of why we do what we do.
No, absolutely. And I think that's critically, now more so than ever in the past 2 years, we've seen massive growth kind of just in interest in the outdoors and also just, I think, becoming more and more aware in terms of what's possible kind of at your doorstep, perhaps trails that you didn't even realize that were there until you became confined to your home and you were looking for things to do, close to home. What kind of growth have you guys seen over the past 2 years?
The past 2 years in particular have been pretty wild. Like you said, the pandemic really changed a lot of people's behaviors. I'd say that COVID was an accelerant of a trend that we've been seeing for a long time, which is sort of this global reawakening to the awesomeness of time outside, right? I think as soon as you plug into it, as soon as you realize it, it just clicks in. Like I just feel better when I spend time outside. During the pandemic, my wife and I got an indoor bike, and we use it all the time. It's great, but when I need to refill my cup, I'm going outside on my mountain bike, or I'm getting out for a quick hike every single time. You just feel different. You just feel better. And I think that it's not. I think this is one of the things that really strikes people is it's not just a physical health thing. You can compare an hour on in a gym on a bike on a treadmill versus an hour on the trail. the workout might be the same, but it's the emotional health and the mental health piece that you get from time outside too. So it's just this whole different level of holistic health that I think you can only find outside. And I think that during the pressure cooker that was the lockdown, and people really, really being stressed and I don't know, scared, unsure,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people were turning to nature for solace and for escape and for a little bit even of a sense of normalcy while they were out there. And that's the kind of thing that just doesn't leave you. And so even as the world's starting to open up, we're still seeing these same usage patterns out there. We're still seeing that people, maybe they're traveling further from home now, but that time outside has just become a core part of more and more people's routines.
Yeah, I think that's kind of. I'm curious about whether kind of the user profile of an AllTrails user has changed as well as someone who's downloaded the app in the last 2 years might be using the app to kind of try to discover because they've never really taken the time to. Perhaps they were too busy or they were traveling so much to understand kind of what's happening in their local environment. And now that kind of borders are opening up again, might be taking AllTrails with them on vacation and on travels as well.
Yeah, I still read all of our App Store and Google Play Store reviews, and my favorite one that we get all the time, more than anything else, is there are so many trails near me I never knew existed. And I
Yeah,
love that. It's the same for me. I mean, I live in the Bay Area. I've lived here almost my whole life, and I'm still discovering new trails that I'd never even heard of before all the time. It's
right.
great. And I think
Yeah.
that it took the world really slowing down for people to, stop like looking so far abroad and really look inward and look local. And so I think that was a really interesting change is people taking the time to discover all of just the natural beauty nearby.
Yeah.
And then they take it with them as they start to travel.
No, I can definitely relate to that because I was in Boston when the pandemic hit. Typically, I'm based in Amsterdam, but I grew up outside of Toronto, and my parents are still there. So, in the interest of immediate safety, that's where I went right after it was like March 15th, that day that the world stopped. And my mom was a big fan of All Trails and been using it for quite a while. But then we kind of turned to it, and indeed, the same thing we discovered. And this is, I lived in this house since I was 6 years old. So you think what's going on around you, and you discover all these trails that are even walking distance of the house, even that I had never even known about. And it was mind blowing, and I think that kind of speaks to this broader trend of using technology in kind of this innovative way of not necessarily replacing nature in any sense, but in fact actually offering facilitating that first connection to nature that for some people is even right at their doorstep and they might have not even known about it.
I couldn't agree more. My dad, growing up, my dad was a geologist. And so, summer vacations when all my friends were going to the beach or going to Disneyland, he'd take us, deep into the backcountry. We were checking all the state parks and all the national parks. And, it was his classroom, right? And
Yeah.
it's really easy to take for granted having a parent teach you how to spend time outside, right? It's something that's passed down from generation to generation. And what I've certainly realized over the last several years is not everyone has that kind of access, and there are some barriers that really keep people from spending time outside. There's this narrative that's going on, which is great around these holistic health benefits of spending time outside. Why you should spend there's different numbers out there 120 minutes a week or 10 minutes a
Right.
day, whatever it is, right? But like people know that they should spend more time outside and it's a great thing, but they don't know how to do it, right? And that's really, really what we're trying to do is we try and use technology to democratize access. And we try and do it by, I think the two things that keep people out of, the trails are lack of information and lack of confidence, right? And
Right.
I think that again, it's easy when you're already plugged in to take those for granted, but we're trying to use technology to solve both of those.
Hmm. So in a way, I mean, how proud is your dad of you today being the CEO of arguably I'd say the world's largest kind of outdoors app, right? I mean, that must make him super proud.
Yeah, it's funny. He's old school, so he's always like, wait, Ron, how do you guys make money
Why do
again?
you
Like,
need an app for that?
how do you guys pay your employees? I don't get it. I don't get it. So it's definitely lost on him, I think. But yeah, it is fun. I mean, it's always neat when when you get the opportunity to work at something that is at this kind of scale, and thankfully is something that just feels so additive to a lot of people's lives. Like, again, it's not. It never gets old when you tell me that your mom and your sister love it. Like, it still puts a smile on my face. That's great.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, that's awesome. So tell the listeners a little bit more about, let's dive into the technology a little bit. What powers the app? How do you guys go about, marking new trails? What does that process look like?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start with a little bit of a history lesson, if that's all right.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
not going too far back, but I took over from the original founder in 2015. It was a six-person company, super small. We probably had AllTrails was started in 2010, so it had a few years under our belt. And
Mm,
he had just launched the apps, just launched the subscription service, so we probably had maybe a million cumulative users since 2010, and maybe like 10 or 15,000 pro subscribers. And I came on board, and I had a sense that the product was pretty raw. What I didn't realize is actually how bad the data was when I started here, and that was a little bit
right.
terrifying. So given that the app was, I was inheriting something, right? So you don't want to come in and just flip the table over. So I spent the first 3 months just really trying to figure out what exactly do we have here, what exactly are we
Mm,
working with. And I read, every blog post I could get my hands on, every App Store review, every Reddit thread, just anything. Obviously, like all of the quantitative data, but also all the qualitative data too. And the theme that really,
mm,
again, just struck me was how much we were letting people down with bad data. Like telling someone that a trail is dog friendly and it wasn't dog friendly, and they would get a ticket, or
right.
that a trailhead is here and it wasn't, and they would just like be driving around Forest Service roads or whatever. So it was like a very hard pivot at the start of 2016. It's like, all right, this is too high consequence. We're sending people out into the backcountry. Like,
Yeah.
we got to get this right. And so it was a grind. It was building it from scratch. So I as a six-person company, you're kind of doing everything. You're doing a lot of the stuff that doesn't scale. I downloaded the top 10,000 trails out of Google Analytics in terms of page views, and just started going through them one by one by one, and then trying to
Right.
find like the patterns, kind of recognizing, all right, we need to have this minimum bar that every trail needs to have. So actually, taking a step back, we curate all of our content. This is, I think, the big differentiator with AllTrails versus a lot of other folks out there. It's not just a
Mm,
collection of user generated content that you can just find and go do. That
sure. It's not
can
like an
be very
open trail
problematic.
map.
Yeah, this is because, again, not the level of consequence with all this stuff. We want to curate all of our data and really put our stamp of approval before we send people out.
Sure.
So we had to rebuild it. We had to rebuild the entire system from scratch, and we just did it one trail at a time. Kind of had to build the tools out. Like, all right, you can't change the profile pictures. We had to build that out. Or we're going to have this notion of every
Mm,
single trail before it goes live is going to have a start point, an end point, and a red line on a map that we call the verified route, that like we vouch for.
sure.
And so we had to start rebuilding it that way, one trail at a time. By the end of 2016, maybe we had like 40,000 trails. We're up to like 300,000 today. So the tricky thing with trails is that they're really fluid also.
Yeah.
So it's not just the trail creation part, but the curation part is really
Mm,
tricky, because there's floods, there's fires, there's erosion, there's maintenance, there's development, there's just all of these things. It's not like roads. Um,
yeah.
so we had to also then, in parallel with building up our own internal tools, and the teams and the processes, and it's evolved quite a lot. There's now whole layers of AI and ML over it to try and expedite it and do it at a global scale. But the other piece of it, and this is what I think is what's really great and rewarding, is the way the community comes together to help us curate, right? And so sometimes we need boots on the ground. We can't send our company to 200 countries on all seven continents. That doesn't
Yeah,
scale.
yeah. Well, I
That
don't
kind
know
of
how big your team is these days. Who knows?
not that big. So doing this, in partnership with our community and sort of this sense of like we're all in this together has been just it's a really beautiful thing. It almost
Yeah,
has like I don't know, like Wikipedia vibes to it sometimes, where we're all trying to do something for the greater good, and that's really
right,
helped us scale. And so again, like there's this partnership that we have, and these investment in tools and processes, and where it lives in the app, where it lives on the website, the way it works with customer support. So and then it's all built on proprietary tools that we've just built up from scratch.
right. And how would a hiker or a mountain biker, or someone who's using the trail, how does that feedback process work?
For new trail submissions or for kind of the curation part?
The curation part. If you were sending out, if you just had created a new trail and you wanted to get boots on the ground, see if it works.
Yeah. With just a tap in the app, you can, report an issue and give detailed feedback. And then it goes to, we have what's called a data integrity team.
Mm,
It's if it's not the biggest, it's the second biggest org in the company. Engineering might have passed it, but it's a huge
mm,
team. And we have a global network of local on the ground contractors as well. And so we can
right,
do really tight turnaround times when we get these feedback loops. And that's something again we're trying to like augment and accelerate with just better technology as well. And then
right,
so there's sort of like the active feedback loops where the users are explicitly taking the time to report something to tell us. And then there's sort of passive feedback streams as well. And so we do all the
mm,
semantic querying through the trail reviews. That's one of the great things of having curated content is that
right,
we'll create these trail guides again that has all the structured data, and then we flood it with UGC, with user reviews and photos and recordings, and so we can parse through all three of those data sets and find signals around where we might need to change something.
right. So, are you using sentiment analysis for that, or what kind of tools would you use to do
Yeah,
something like that?
yeah, exactly. And we're like in the first inning of sentiment analysis. I'd say like there's a lot
Mm,
more investment and work to do there. So we do
right.
sentiment. That's exactly we're querying the reviews for sentiment. We all the photos are geotagged, so we can kind of see if there are clusters of geotagged photos that are off
Right.
route and why is that happening. And then with
Right.
our navigator tool and our Garmin integration, we're ingesting anonymized GPX files as well, so we can create heat maps and make sure that are there patterns of users deviating from a verified route, which probably
Sure.
signals that the route itself has
There's
changed
probably
versus
a
just a
reason.
one-off. Yeah, exactly. And that's the
Sure.
tricky part, is having to find patterns in this stuff, versus just
Yeah.
someone who's going and trailblazing themselves.
How do you guys communicate about that, and how do you do that? Because I'm thinking is that it can be incredibly meaningful for the users to know that them engaging with the app, whether it's passively by uploading photos, or I guess that's an active form of engagement, but for you guys it's passive, whether it's uploading photos or adding a piece of feedback or adding a review, that's really either directly or indirectly helping you guys make that trail better. So is that something that you guys communicate?
I don't think we do a good enough job communicating that personally. Like, I think we need to
Mm,
build out some feedback loops and kind of really shine a light on our users, give them a kudos, give them a high five, as a
right.
thank you. So that's something we're going to be building out more of this year, which I'm really, really excited about, and just have more of an ongoing dialogue on a human to human level, as
Yeah.
opposed to like aggregated.
Right. It could even be something like, in Google reviews where you have certain people that have that verification as a local guide. And then
Totally,
whatever they say about a restaurant or whatever is taken with an extra, an extra. I mean, you should always take a review with a grain of salt, but, with a little bit of extra authority than others might.
100%.
Perhaps that could be something like a local hiker or something.
Absolutely, absolutely. And same with if you work at a park system, if you work in a land management system, we should be elevating your voice as well. So this
Yeah.
is a lot. It's funny. So like I said earlier, I've been here 6 years, and even just talking with you for what 15 minutes, like the wheel starts spinning, right? Like it's really fun, to think about all
Yeah.
the places that all trails can go. So we're not short on ideation by any means, and this is why
No.
we've been doubling headcount for the last 3 years straight, is we have so much to build. And even having
Yeah.
been here 6 years, and even the company being around since 2010, it's funny saying this, but like I really feel like we're just getting started right now. Like I
Mm,
look ahead and there's just so much cool opportunity in front of us to just
yeah.
build more and build
Yeah.
better.
No, and in a way, again, not to keep going back to it, but the pandemic has kind of catapulted what you're saying, these longer trends that were already happening. And the pandemic has kind of catapulted you guys into the position where you do have more users, but also I read one of the few companies that's reached 1 million paid subscribers.
And that was in January of this year, so it's grown pretty dramatically since
Yeah.
then too. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. And what's fun? I will say this: the bigger we get, what I love about what we're doing is the more good we get to do. It gives. We've been
Yeah.
profitable since 2017, and we don't take that for granted. And I have 3 kids. I'm raising them on the trail, and I don't take our wild spaces for granted either. Giving back is a core part of like our family's philosophy, and it's a core part of the AllTrails identity as well. And so we've
Mm,
been very proud 1% for the Planet members, since 2018, 2019. We've set an internal target of planting 1 million trees in 2022 through our new referral program. Anytime you refer someone, refer a friend, and it's all free. If your sister referred you into the platform, we'll plant a tree for
right.
you and a tree for your sister, and
Right.
let's see if we can get to 1 million trees. I think that'd be the coolest thing in the world, just to be able to say at the end of the year, we planted 1 million trees last year. So these
Yeah.
are kind of things that, like, at scale, hopefully kind of start becoming a little bit more impactful, a little bit more meaningful. And that's a great motivator for everyone here, just that mission driven, be part of a cause, be part of something that, is bigger than all of us.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm curious kind of in terms of that ideation, what are some crazy ideas that have come up in those sessions that you'd love to see All Trails perhaps achieve one day?
I think it's a balance between sort of like the obvious stuff that we need to do, and then the longer term crazier stuff. I
Mhm.
think, when I look at 2022, I think that there's an obvious or an obvious need to improve the on trail experience. One of the things that I love about All Trails is, no matter where you go, whether it's local or somewhere, you've never been before, domestically,
Mm,
internationally, you download the recording, or you download the trail, and it's like a local is taking you out there. Like I was in Hawaii a couple
right.
of years ago, mountain biking, a place I'd never been before, and I found this great route that someone had submitted, and it was as if he or she was out there showing me around, and I had a great day. It was the best day
Right.
of my trip, right? So I love that, and I think that there's a lot of room we have to really elevate that on trail experience.
Right.
If we're talking crazy, like the longer term stuff, maybe then at some point you layer in, like, I don't know, AR or VR, and you can add like a really neat educational component out there, whether it's
Right.
stars or peaks or plants or tracks or whatever it is. That's the kind of fun stuff. I think that
Yeah.
there's a lot we're going to be doing with personalization, which is, again, I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
Everyone who knows me knows I'm a very mediocre mountain biker. I love mountain biking. And I have a dog, right? And I have a dog. We don't, so when I go hiking, I want dog friendly trails. And so as the app gets to know me, it just, proactively feed me these trails that are going to fit
Sure.
into the
That fit
profile
your
of my,
profile.
right? And so,
Yeah.
and everyone's different, and that's what's great. There's no one right way to enjoy the outdoors, but we can do a better
Right.
job of really tailoring our content based off of your preferred activities and skill levels. And do you like elevation or not? Do you want stuff that's easy or
Right.
hard, help you progress up? So
Right.
I think personalization is going to be, I hope we make a lot of forward progress on the personalization front. I think one area where I'm personally super stoked is just this notion of community, because
Mm,
hiking and mountain biking and backpacking, like, these are social activities, and these are things, like I said, like, people who know me know I love to mountain bike. I'm
right.
guessing your sister and your mom, like the people who know them, like, know they love hiking and spending time on the trail. And you have your real world communities and your online communities, and it's
Yeah.
such a great positive space to be in, especially when you compare it to the overly pressurized social networks that are out there today. So how do we create those spaces within All Trails where people can come together for discovery of new trails and new trail content, for
Right.
inspiration, for celebration? how can we, facilitate online to offline? Just like how can I just feel like there's so
Yeah.
much more we can do in that space, and I can't wait to try and unlock all of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
you've got
No,
years worth of
that's
stuff to share
insanely.
with us.
No, yeah, you guys got your work cut out for you. But I mean, it just goes to show, indeed, as you said, you can think, you're now, what is it, 11 years along, almost 12 years along in AllTrails as a company, yet you just feel like you're just getting started, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Um, I'm curious. So you mentioned that, this idea of democratizing access to the outdoors, which really spoke to me, which is, I think, kind of one of why technology is such an interesting tool to use in kind of reconnecting people to nature, because it does kind of have that air of making it accessible to everyone. Is that something that you guys also play up in your marketing, or in terms of where the app gets exposure, or how are you really making sure that that mission is coming to fruition?
Yeah, that's a great question. To give you some context, we just hired our CMO. Like she just started last week, was her first week.
Oh,
So
wow.
I know, and we've been lucky in that, marketing has probably historically been our most underfunded department here.
Yeah.
The product has really done a lot of the heavy lifting for us, and things like word of mouth, and but we're trying to build a global brand. I mean, that is a big part of what we're trying to do. We want to build a global brand that's synonymous with outdoor exploration. And so on the storytelling side, I think that that's an area where there's so much opportunity, and it's both
Yeah.
for us to do a better job, and then also amplifying the voices within our community, and doing that
Right.
through social media. We've never really done social media. The woman who runs our data integrity program asked me in 2017 if, like, we didn't have an Instagram account. She's like, "Hey, do you mind
Right.
if I just?" I was like, "Go for it. I got no bandwidth." But yeah, go for it. And she's just been running it on the side, and it's awesome. It's got like 500,000 people.
Right.
It's super engaged. But like that
Oh,
should be
that's
10x
amazing. Yeah.
that, right? Like that should be a
Yeah.
huge community of
Yeah.
beautiful, like-minded individuals here who just love spending time outside.
Right.
So these are the areas that also I'm really, really excited to start cultivating and developing, because it's such a core part of our why
Yeah.
and why we do what we do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And so it is a free app, but there is this premium paid pro subscription you can get as well. What's included in that?
So all of our trail content is free for everybody, and we've
Hmm.
translated into Spanish, French, and German as well. And my hope is we'll be getting maybe another 10 more languages live this year. This is part of the
Wow.
democratization, right? Like
Yeah.
people all over the globe need to be able to like read and access our content.
Yeah.
So all of that's free. We just want people spending time in nature. Like that is the why behind what we do.
Yeah.
But our subscription service offers additional functionality. And so it's got stuff like you can download maps directly to your phone. So they'll work even when you don't have a data signal. So that blue
Right.
GPS dot, that works even
Yeah.
when your cell signal isn't there. And so you can
I've learned
always,
learned that.
yeah. And I mean, that's a
I was going
game
to say
changer.
the hard way, but I think it's actually a good way.
Yeah.
I
I
was
mean,
happy that it was working.
again, like being a very mediocre mountain biker, like I get lost a lot, and
Yeah.
that blue dot, and being able to navigate by loading a route in advance and have it work even when I'm out of cell phone range has saved my butt so many times.
Yeah.
Same with
Yeah.
backpacking
Yeah.
and stuff too. It's a game changer. It's like living in the future, having that.
Yeah.
So
No, exactly.
that's really our workhorse. And then if we can buzz your phone if you veer off route, do some cool safety features like that. We
Right.
have all these neat overlays. So if you are into stargazing, you can see like a light pollution overlay. We have pollen, we have air quality. I live in California, so the air quality one is super
Mm.
relevant, during
Yeah.
fire season. And
Absolutely.
this is an area where, again, we're going to be investing a ton of energy and resources to keep building out more, and different types of pro feature sets too, to kind of recognize the variety of types of users within our platform as well.
Yeah. 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 You mentioned a little bit already when we were talking about the different ideas that you guys have in terms of using AR and VR and those kinds of things. Even just throughout our conversation, I'm referring back to previous conversations I've had on the podcast, people like who started the Allison Young, who started the City Nature Challenge with the iNaturalist app. I could see like a lot of parallels between people that are using AllTrails would very much also be interested in iNaturalist and trying to understand what species are around them and contribute to citizen science in that way. Is there is that on the horizon, these kinds of these other apps that might act as very good complements for one another, or not necessarily an app, other technologies or other data sources?
Yeah, yes. The devil's always in the details, which is the funny part. And I'll just, one of our sister companies where we have the same private equity ownership group is
Mm,
Headspace. And we've been talking to them for
right.
years. Like, just see, right? Hand in glove, right? Like, find a beautiful plant or a
Yeah.
beautiful vista and do a meditation. And we cannot,
Yeah.
and, people much smarter than me, like in a room together, we
Yeah.
cannot figure out like how to actually like do this
Mm,
together. And so I
right.
don't know what the answer is. One of the challenges that we have from a technological perspective is that our app is very often used when you don't have a data signal. And so you have to preload content into it, and it takes up a
Sure.
lot of space. And so that's, those are some of like the details that just trip some of these things up. But again,
Sure.
someone smarter than me will figure it out at some point. And I think that again, like your mind is going to all the same spots. Like there's definitely like opportunities out there. We just got to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I was even thinking of, I spoke to Jared Hanley of Nature Quant recently on the podcast as well. I don't know, are you familiar with Nature Quant?
Mm-mm.
It's a company out of Oregon, and they just launched a year ago. Their app doesn't even go live until December 2021, in a month or so. And basically, what they've done is they've scored the nature. So based on a radius around every single address in the states, they've scored based on satellite imagery, park data, noise pollution data, light pollution, all these different data sources. They combined it all, given that nature a score, and then their nature dose app, which is the complement to it, using a GPS signature, basically follows you around and tracks how much exposure you've had to nature that day, what your nature dose was for that day. So again, that's just another one where I'm like, that is just the possibilities between the two is really interesting.
I love that. I mean, I get asked a lot, like who are your competitors and stuff like that, and I don't care about anyone that's in the app store at all.
Yeah,
I think that our
yeah.
competitors are inertia and folks who think that the outdoors are scary or full of bugs or bears or like the ones who it's sort of that mindset of not being connected yet. Like that's the competition. Like how do we pull them
Mm,
over to get their first steps out on the trail? And that's a heavy lift, and I might be
yeah,
bullish on what all trails can do, but we cannot do that alone. And so the more people that are out there kind of fighting that good fight and really like championing the message, the why, why
right.
people should spend more time
Yeah,
outside, the better. And so it's great to hear that there's folks like that. One of the things that's been really fun for us over the last 2 years is there's this whole cohort of physicians who are now starting to literally prescribe hikes for things like
yeah,
hypertension and diabetes and people going through chemo. And I think that is just the coolest thing, also. So, like, how do we enable them, right? How can we partner
right.
with them? Like, all the different whys there's a huge spectrum of why people should spend more.
Yeah,
And whatever's going to resonate with any individual, it's all good. So,
right.
how can we help enable that?
Right. That just what you just said about not being worried about other people in the app store. It reminded me of this talk that I saw. It was the CEO of a really big mattress company, and he was talking about my biggest competitors are not other bed or mattress companies. It's Netflix. It's preventing people from getting good sleep.
Oh, it's true though. It's true, right? Like competition is a good thing if it's for, I don't know that selling more mattresses is necessarily a greater good, but but getting people outside is a greater good. And I feel like the more
For
of us that are
sure.
doing it, the better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. How is that something that you try to bring into your own life?
What specifically?
About in terms of getting in the outdoors and making it a priority.
Oh, Absolutely, yeah. So my wife and I, we have three kids, ages 12, 9, and 5, and we've really been trying to raise them on the trail. It's actually really neat. We got one of those hiking backpacks when our oldest was just a baby, and so she was the guinea pig for all of it. And all three
Right.
kids, though, like you get kid babies love being in nature. They love it. Like they're psychologically we're all built for that, and so they
Yeah.
all three of them would get this really zen state, and they would just even before like their eyesight's developed, it's the shadows, it's the contrast, and
Right.
they would just calm down for hours. We could spend hours out there, and so that was great. Now that my daughter's older, she's really getting into mountain biking with me, which I just love. My during the pandemic, my son, my youngest son is 5, so at the start of the pandemic, he was just starting to be able to do hikes on his own too, and it was neat, seeing him progress from a mile hike to we went to Hawaii earlier this year, before Delta flared up, and we did a 5 mile hike with him out in Volcanoes National Park, and he was a champ. He was just like running the whole time. So
Right.
it's one of our core values.
Yeah.
The kids, they don't fight when they're out in nature. Like they're not fussy,
It's so many
they just get
benefits.
this like
Yeah.
it really is. It really is. So that's been a
Yeah.
big part.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's beautiful. I'm curious, do you have a favorite trail?
I do. I do. I'd say my all-time favorite trail is the Nepali Coast Trail in Kauai. I've gone there twice. I solo backpacked it twice now. I did it once right after graduating college, and once after leaving my previous startup, which was in the ski space. Like both times were at like big crossroads in my life, and
Right.
it's a gnarly trail. It's 11 miles, but it's like a hard and
Right.
sometimes a little scary 11 miles. And then you get to this pristine beach where there's hardly anyone there. It feels like you'd see a dinosaur come out from the valley somewhere.
Oh,
And it's
that's
just this
incredible.
magical spot. And so to be able to spend a few days out there and just really soak it in and be like fully off the grid, and I don't know,
Right.
reconnect, like think deeply, think slowly. That's probably my favorite spot on the planet, if I'm being honest.
It sounds beautiful. That one should get an extra gold star on the AllTrails app.
Yeah, absolutely. How about yourself? Do you have a favorite trail yet?
Oh, that's a good question. There is one. It's it's called Congost de Montgabai, which it's in the Catalonia region of Spain, in the middle of the Pyrenees Mountains, and the Congost basically means canyon, and it's this trail it's this beautiful old growth forest, and then you essentially the entire hiking trail, the vast majority of it is on this sheer cliff drop off into this canyon. So you have this old growth forest on the one side, and then you have this beautiful turquoise water that makes up the river in the canyon below. And for the vast majority of the trail, you're holding on to dear life on these like little tiny little wimpy steel ropes that they've attached to the side of the cliff. For I don't know, you should really be wearing a harness, to be honest, while you're doing this, but for some reason that hasn't been mandated yet. And yeah, it's incredible. I think that's probably my favorite one. I've got the opportunity to do it 3 times now. It's a region that I love to go to, so that's probably my
Wow,
favorite. Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. I got to add
Yeah.
that one to my
the,
list.
the the one unfortunate thing is, I'm curious. I haven't looked it up on All Trails, although no doubt it's there. The one disadvantage is that it was featured on some national Spanish television show as one of the most beautiful trails in Spain, and just from one year to the next, if for one side of the canyon you couldn't see anybody for almost the entire trail, and then 2 years after that it was like you were just in a single file line. So that was less great, but hey, I'm happy to share.
That's great. You got it before it blew up.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm curious, Ron. So we talked a little bit at the beginning when when you took over as CEO at AllTrails, that one of the first things you did was going through all these different reviews and Reddits and subreddits and blogs, where obviously you got some negative critique, and that's really kind of formed the basis for the improvements for the past 6 years. Are there any naysayers today, that any misconceptions that people, kind of common misconceptions that people might have about the app?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people with strong opinions when it comes to outdoor spaces. I think that
That's for sure.
there's probably two main buckets. One is there's this cohort of people, and it's usually they're the gatekeepers, right? Like they're usually like the crusty old guys who like really just don't want people coming out on the trails, and they think that the key to preservation and conservation is like reducing access, and
Sure.
people should stay home. And I couldn't disagree with them more. I think you need responsible
Mm,
stewardship and everything, and that's like very important, and we need to address like you know capacity constraints and things like that. But no one's going to give a shit about preservation and conservation if they're staying at home. Like everything, whether you're talking about climate, whether you're talking about clean water, whether you're talking about land conservation, preservation, like people need to feel connected to nature. They need to give a damn. If they don't care, if it's this abstract, scary, dirty concept, they won't care. Right. So that's like our whole thing is like, we want everyone to spend time
yeah.
outside, regardless of like political party and regardless of age and race and demographics and urban versus rural. Like the tent is big for everybody. It can be this common
Yeah.
denominator. We just need everyone to care. So there's that group. And then the other group is the folks who think that, technology and nature are incompatible. That group I have a little bit more empathy for. I get it. And it's funny. I was thinking about this over the weekend. Like what if you really do the long view of technology? Like so much of it is about democratizing uh, access to information, right? Democratizing like the printing press, right?
Mm,
Democratizing portability of content. Who are the gatekeepers around who gets to publish? Who are the gatekeepers around who gets access to the content? Like that's one of the really insane things about what tech has done over the last 10, 15 years in particular is like the ability for publishing, for portability, all of this stuff. And so like, in a way, like if you're anti-technology in nature, like how do you reconcile bringing books out there with you? It's the same
sure.
thing. It's the same thing. Sure, one has a screen, one has, printed page on dead trees, but it's still like it's content is
Yeah.
content, and content is
Yeah.
enabled by technology. It's not any different.
Yeah.
It can be richer now and it can be better now. So I think that for those users, it's just really trying to stress how technology can be additive to the overall experience. I mean, I grew up pre-internet. I didn't get on the internet until I was in college. And the number of times I would just try and like get to a trailhead and wander around, thinking that's like
Yeah.
how you do it. And then the number of times I got lost, or I'm trying to get back to my car after dark, or you have no idea what you're getting into. It's such a better experience when you can really find the right trail for you based off of your skill level and your interests and what you want to get into, and reading recent reviews and seeing photos. Like, all right, if I'm gonna go on the trail, like let's have a great day out there.
Right.
So, hopefully we'll start winning those people over. That one's a longer haul. And that's where, again, it takes a village. We can't do that one ourselves, but,
For sure.
that's where we're focusing a lot of our energy on.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that latter one, because that's indeed what this podcast is about, is through a whole host of different technologies, showing people that those technologies are not a replacement for nature in any way. They're simply an extension. Technology is arguably an extension of who we are today, and it's a tool, and humans have always been drawn to tools. That's how we got here in the first place, and that's how we should kind of I guess, envision technology simply as a tool to get us outdoors, and absolutely not as a replacement.
100%. See, it takes a village, right? It's people like
It's
you. It's people like all of us have to do this together to make it not seem like this incompatible thing, right?
right,
Such an additive
right.
part to outdoor recreation.
Right. How I'm curious though, how do you balance? So, kind of, if we to play devil's advocate here and lean towards, the technology and nature is bad argument. How do you reconcile things like, um, there was this interesting paper that came out, and it was talking about how locations, photos that had been geotagged with locations on Instagram of these beautiful natural spaces, that those spaces ended up. Um, Obviously so, leading to more degradation and more litter, because if they are in a spot which is easily accessible, as in, maybe you can park your car and you walk a mile and then you're there, kind of thing. If that attracts so many people, then it of course can be damaging to those
Yeah.
areas. And and then it becomes more of a photo op rather than being able to actually be present and enjoy where you are in nature. Is that something that you guys at All Trails try to bring into your branding, your wording, things that you use on the app to encourage people to be present, to be better environmental stewards?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. The bigger we get, the more cognizant we are of our responsibility to help educate people around responsible stewardship. Like that is a key part, right? We're talking multi-generational views here around nature
Yeah,
preservation, conservation. Like we can't trample it in the short term. And so a lot of it's education, right? A lot of it is through the feature itself. That's why we have that verified route, like stay on the trail, and
yeah,
if you get off, it will buzz you. We'll tell you to get back on it. There's a lot more we need to do. I was in Jackson Hole a couple of weeks ago. They were really at the forefront of that movement, Keep Jackson Hole Wild, which was
really,
fantastic, right? And I live in California, and obviously we had that super bloom a couple of years ago, and I think that was really like the
yeah,
the jumping off point where things just got totally out of hand. Again, the problem is when people leave the trail itself. The trail is there for a reason. The trail is there to is built to handle the foot traffic. Now, granted, like there is overpopulation and overcrowding of trails, and that's
yeah,
again a lot of what we try and do is diffuse that
mm-hmm.
energy across trail networks and trail systems. And because we're trying to highlight like trails less traveled. That was a big theme that came up during
Yeah,
COVID that we launched and went really deep with, is like trails off the beaten path and trails less traveled. And you can have amazing experiences without having to all overcrowd that same one route.
that same one,
So
yeah.
that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great strategy actually, because that is indeed, I think that's where part of the value of All Trails lies, is indeed introducing people to trails that they didn't even know exist, like I did. I mean, I was aware of three really big trails around my childhood home, and then I realized there was like upwards of 20 that I'd never even heard of before. And that's the thing, if you just type in Google hiking around whatever X city, you're only going to probably get maybe three or five different names, and that's it, when there's way more to discover.
Yep. Same with the guidebooks and everything too, right? They pick the most
Yeah,
popular tourist ones, but they're going to be like that one in Spain that you were talking about earlier, where it's
yeah,
overrun. It's not built to handle that type of traffic,
no,
and that's where we want to help, right? We want to help distribute it a little bit more equitably.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure actually, because I was saying about that little steel rope, I'm pretty sure now that they've actually gone in and built a barrier between the cliff, which is like, on the one hand you kind of have to do it if that many people are coming by, but on the other hand it kind of takes away the wildness of the adventure that it was. Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
balance
I
there for
hear that.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Where can people find All Trails and perhaps connect with you if they're interested?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So, I mean, alltrails.com, and then the App Store, Google Play, just search for All Trails, and you'll find us. And then I pride myself. I'm not on any social media, um, except I am on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn for sure. And there's not a lot of Ron Schneidermans out in the world, so search for my name and you'll find me out there.
Yeah, and thank God you are on LinkedIn, because that's how we connected. So that was good that I could find you there.
That's true. Yep.
Um, yeah. Okay, Ron. I think we're nearly there. The last question that I want to ask you is the question that I ask all of my guests who come on the show, which is, what does the Internet of Nature mean to you?
Internet of Nature. That's such a cool phrase. I never heard that before.
Thank
I
you.
think it's like what we were talking about earlier, which is, yeah, which is just like sort of the integration of technology into outdoor exploration, like using it as a tool, like you were saying, like not having it overrun or overwhelm or take away from the experience, but having it be this additive, yeah, this additive piece to it. And whether it's for, trying to dig deeper into the health benefits of spending time outside, and that whole like like what's going on with your blood chemistry and your brain chemistry, like that's all part of it. Getting a better understanding of local plants and local animals is, I think, great. Spending time on the trail, going out and adventuring out on the trail, it's all part of it. But it's a yeah, it's a really, I think you and I are incredibly fortunate that we get to spend our time and energy focusing on something like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I wanted to say too, it sounds like you have one of the best jobs in the world. It sounds really fun.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for coming on, Ron. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Big thanks to Ron for making time to come on the show. If you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast now and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. We really appreciate it, and it really helps to grow the show. We'll be back next week with not one, but two guests, Mark Bode and Willem de Feiter of Tree Collective, a truly innovative application of the Internet of Nature. They are exploring tokenizing trees, but much more on that next week with Mark and Willem. In the meantime, you know what I'm going to say. Download AllTrails to explore a new trail near you. You can filter your search by distance from your home, pet friendliness, terrain difficulty, and much more to find a trail that's perfect for you. I know it's a fan favorite in my house. Lastly, a big thank you to this show's sponsor, the International Society of Arboriculture. We invite you to learn more about the benefits of joining this network dedicated to promoting professional practice of arboriculture and the benefits of trees. Membership in ISA connects you to an international community of like-minded professionals in the fields of arboriculture and urban forestry. As a member, you'll receive discounts and other exclusive opportunities. For more information, visit www.isa-arbor.com/membership. Check it out. Thank you for listening to the Internet of Nature podcast. The show is an NA Media production.